gavel slammed down, echoing in the stillness of the courtroom, a symbol of finality. The air was thick with tension like the moment before a storm breaks. Gasps swept through the gallery, mingling with the heavy scent of polished wood. "Guilty," the judge proclaimed, and the word hung in the air like a dark cloud. Before her stood a woman, her face pale, eyes wide with shock. But it was no ordinary trial. This was something extraordinary, something that tangled fate and destiny in a web of choices. Clara Hastings was accused of murder. A single act, driven by desperation, had plunged her into this abyss. Just a year before, the town had celebrated her as a hero. She had saved a boy named Tommy, trapped in a burning house. The flames licked at the walls, and Clara, without thinking, had charged in, her heart racing. Adrenaline fueled her as she grabbed Tommy's small frame, pulling him out just in time. The townsfolk had hailed her as a savior. But now they sat in judgment, eyes filled with suspicion and fear. The courtroom felt like a theater of the absurd as the prosecutor painted Clara as a monster. He spoke of betrayal, of a life extinguished at her hands. "She didn't care," he shouted, his voice rising. The words pierced through the air, sharp and accusatory. Clara's heart raced. What they termed revenge was her unexpected decision to confront the man who had tormented her life, a man she had once loved and who had turned to darkness. She had followed her emotions into a moment of heated fury, not understanding how quickly her passion could turn deadly. But as the defense presented Clara's case, an unexpected switch flickered in the courtroom. The attorney stumbled through the evidence, trying to illustrate that Clara was not a killer. He highlighted her brave act with Tommy. The entire community had watched her risk her life for a child. It should have been enough. Yet, nothing is straightforward in life or death. Then, at the very edge of the courtroom, a soft voice broke through the thick tension. "Your Honor," Tommy stood, now a young man, no longer the frightened child but carrying the weight of memories and bravery. All eyes turned to him. The air pulsed with uncertainty. "Tommy," Clara breathed, her heart racing. Fear and hope intertwined in her chest. I remember the fire." His voice wavered, but he pressed on. "She saved me. She didn't hurt anyone." Gasps filled the space once more. The prosecutor's smirk faltered, almost evaporating under the ardent gaze of a boy witnessing his rescuer defend her life. The silence that followed spoke louder than any words. Tommy continued, "You don't know the pain she's been through. She was trying to protect the people she loved." His eyes glistened with tears, his courage and sincerity palpable. He had ventured into the eye of the storm, voicing his truth against all odds. But the courtroom was a battlefield, and emotions shredded every certainty. Clara's family gazed at him with pleading eyes. They had not understood. They had only seen a woman who was capable of dark things. Dark things were easy to grasp when they weren't connected to the story filled with love and anguish. The prosecutor rallied, confident he could sway the jury. "This is a classic case of misplaced loyalty. You think she had your best interest at heart, Tommy." Clara's heart twisted. Would they throw Tommy's truth aside like yesterday's news? "Stop lying," Tommy shouted, his voice quivering but unyielding. "She saved me, and now she needs saving. You can't judge her soul based on one mistake." Tension crackled like static electricity, the air heavy with unspoken truths. Clara remembered all those nights spent after the fire, the overwhelming guilt that bathed her in shadows. She thought of the destruction she had caused and the hollow place it left in her heart. Yet she found strength in the boy who loved her despite everything, marching forward with conviction. The prosecutor sneered, "And what is truth, Tommy? A moment in time. You think you know her." But there, standing tall despite his age, Tommy shook his head. There was fire in his eyes, a storm of emotions battling within him. "Maybe I'm just a kid, but I know love when I see it. And I know pain. I've felt it. What happened was not Clara's fault." Through those words, Clara saw glimpses of hope piercing through darkness. Her fingers trembled as she wiped away the tears pooling in her eyes. The moment unfolded like petals in bloom, each word threading life back into her, reclaiming her identity. "Your Honor," Clara interjected, her voice steady yet raw with vulnerability. "I'm not a monster. I let my fears distort my vision. Tommy made me remember who I truly am. I didn't mean to drift into chaos. I meant to protect the ones I love." The judge regarded Clara with a solemn expression, the weight of his responsibility evident in his eyes. "You stand accused of a serious crime." But Tommy's words bridged the chasm that had formed after the fire. Every eye in the courtroom bore witness to the truth, a flicker of understanding igniting in their hearts. Sometimes our struggles make us blind to compassion, enveloping us in judgment. The prosecutor faltered again, his arguments fraying under the intensity of emotion. Clara felt him lose his grip, as if the very ground beneath him shifted. "No," Tommy breathed deeply, "but what happened happened. Clara is not defined by that moment. Look at her past." The walls that confined Clara crumbled. She remembered childhood dreams, laughter shared by the firelight, and the joy of being someone's hero. This moment was transforming the courtroom into a sanctuary of empathy, a sacred space where human flaws were met with grace. As the jury deliberated, Clara embraced the silence, hoping desperately that love would conquer the shadows. Tommy's brave heart had ignited passion in the silence of fear, silhouetting the human story unfolding before them. And then, after what felt like a lifetime, the jury returned, their expressions unreadable. The foreman cleared his throat, tension rippling through the atmosphere once more. Clara's heart hammered in her chest like a drum at war. "Not guilty," the foreman declared. The word rippled through the crowd like a whispering breeze, gentle yet powerful. Relief swept Clara as she teetered on the brink of emotions. Joy washed over her, but in that heartbeat, she felt the weight of her choices. The past would never fully fade, but the future still gleamed, illuminated by the bond she'd formed with a boy who believed in her when no one else would. Tommy rushed to her side, embracing her tightly. He whispered, the words echoing what her heart had longed to hear. Clara felt the warmth of grateful tears streaming down her face, blending laughter with the remnants of grief. In that moment, life expanded beyond judgment, proof that kindness could dispel shadows, that stories woven with compassion could unite souls to rise together. The courtroom transformed back into a world filled with ordinary chatter, but Clara held onto this moment a realization that sometimes what binds us to one another transcends mere actions. Hope grows from humility, love shines through forgiveness, and every heart carries the power to chart its course, mirroring the paths of even the most unexpected advocates. That day, Clara's journey shifted. A tapestry of resilience began to unfurl. Stitched together by every thread of truth spoken, love carried her beyond the hangman's noose. And Tommy, the boy she once saved, illuminated her way forward, redefining their destinies as intertwined heroes in a world wrought with complexities. The gavel struck with a thunderous bang, reverberating through the hushed courtroom. The judge's voice echoed like a death knell, chilling the air. Gasps rippled through the gallery, leaving an icy silence that settled over the room. Clara Hastings, her heart racing, stood frozen, her world crashing down in that single word. Just days ago, she had been celebrated as a hero, the woman who saved a boy when flames engulfed his home. Now she faced the ultimate punishment, hanging accused of a crime that felt like a cruel twist of fate. The juxtaposition burned deep. Hero one day, monster the next. The harsh reality of life could be unbearably stark. Clara's thoughts spiraled back to the day of the fire. She had rushed into burning ruins, adrenaline coursing through her veins, desperately reaching for tiny hands. In that moment, it felt as if time stood still, and the flames whispered tales of courage. She was a warrior for love. But here, in this sterile room, the love was buried under layers of betrayal and a single reckless decision. The prosecutor, a fierce man with fire in his eyes, leaned into the argument. He painted Clara as cold, calculating, driven by revenge against the man who had murdered her brother, a man she had chosen to confront in anger, leading her to the tragic question of culpability. It was a love turned to fury, a passion that escalated beyond imagination. "Your Honor," the prosecutor thundered, "this woman must pay. She thought she was above the law, taking matters into her own hands." Each word felt like a blade slicing through Clara's heart. Spectators shifted uncomfortably, uncertainty hanging in the air like fog. Would they see her true colors or just the shadows cast by fear? Then a voice broke through the tension. Everyone turned. There at the edge of the courtroom stood Tommy, the boy Clara had saved. The years had transformed him from that terrified child into a determined young man. Though he faced judgment, a light flickered in his eyes. A flame of courage ignited from the moment Clara pulled him from the blaze. Clara's heart soared. Could his words alter the course of this bleak trial? He nodded, stepping forward, voice trembling yet resolute. The heat of the courtroom intensified as all eyes locked onto him. "I know what people are saying," Tommy began, his gaze unwavering. "About Clara, about the person she is, but I don't want you to believe that. She saved me." Clara's heart swelled, hope fluttering within her chest like a fragile bird trapped in a storm. Memories flooded back. Tommy's small body in her arms as the smoke choked the air, the fear in his eyes transforming into relief when she emerged, holding him tight. "Clara is not a monster," Tommy continued, his eyes darting around the room. "That day she loved me enough to fight against all odds, and I know about loss. I lost my own family in that fire." A murmur swept through the gallery. People leaned in, the judge's expression softening as he considered the young man before him. But the prosecutor wasn't ready to relinquish his grip. His voice was cold, like steel cutting through the warmth of Tommy's truth. "I might have been a child," Tommy replied, "but I know pain and I know love. I understand Clara. We all make mistakes. She didn't intend to harm anyone." His words were a hurricane whirling through the courtroom, challenging the very foundations of the accusation. Clara felt her chest tighten, listening to his brave defense. The boy she had saved was now defending her. It was a narrative full of layers, darker than she had imagined. "Tommy," Clara tried to interject, her voice raw with emotion. "You don't have to do this for me. You saved me, Clara." He turned back toward the prosecutor and then looked back at the judge. "You have to see her for who she really is, not just this terrible moment. This is not all she has been." A tense silence filled the room as hesitations lingered, crackling like static. Clara's mind raced with thoughts spiraling out of control. Could love and forgiveness truly outweigh a mistake? Could they reshape the very fabric of justice? Then, with a courage only found in the face of adversity, Tommy pressed on. "Look at her. Look at what she's done. The time she stood by me after the fire, comforting me. The time she helped others in our community." The judge leaned forward, considering Tommy's words closely. Could one act of bravery redefine Clara's future? Could a boy's memories, so vibrant against the backdrop of betrayal, change hearts? "Your Honor," Tommy said, voice steadying, "I'm standing here because I believe in hope. Clara might have messed up, but we all have our battles. No one is perfect. She fought for me when I didn't know how to fight for myself. It is not just about punishment. It's about healing, about understanding who we are." In that moment, the courtroom held its breath, a suspended reality where hope flickered amidst despair. Clara's eyes glistened with tears as she gazed at Tommy, his spirit so resolute against the sea of judgment. But the prosecutor saw blood in the water. And what if her mistake had cost Tommy his life? Is it fair to place that burden on another family? Tommy inhaled deeply, gathering strength. "We all make mistakes. I lost everything in that fire. If the judge sentences Clara to death, another life is lost. Being vengeful won't heal the wounds. Love can." Every word felt like a bomb dropped, shaking the very foundation of truth and justice. Clara's heart raced with a mixture of gratitude and panic, praying silently that Tommy's brave voice might sway the judge. In the silence that followed, a small girl in the back of the courtroom caught Clara's eye. She held a tattered teddy bear, a remnant of loss just like Tommy. The realization swept over her: this wasn't just about her, it was about all of them. Were they willing to forgive or forever live in shadows? The judge broke the silence, his voice cautious yet thoughtful. "You speak of healing, young man, but what is the cost of healing?" Clara felt her body tense. That question was a dagger aimed at her heart. There was a cost to be paid, she knew that all too well. "Your Honor," Clara finally spoke, her voice strong despite the heaviness in her heart. "Life has taught me that love often comes at a price. I've hurt people I cared about in search of vengeance, but the way I found forgiveness and growth was by choosing love over fear." Tommy's inspired resilience echoed around the room, somehow illuminating a path through darkness. Clara could see the vulnerability in the judge's eyes, the way her words had stirred something deep within him. Perhaps justice could be more than retribution, Perhaps it could embrace transformation. With quiet determination, the judge nodded slowly. The gavel raised once more, but it hesitated in the air, an uncertain heartbeat, a pause filled with possibility. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Could this be the turning point? "Clara Hastings," the judge began, voice low and deliberate, "the court understands the complexities of your actions. The choice to act was a moment of overwhelming emotion, ignited by your desire to protect." Tommy held Clara's gaze, unyielding and strong. They shared the weight of understanding that this was a pivotal moment. "In recognition of your acts of bravery and the impact they have had on this community, I am sparing your life, but you must serve a substantial sentence." Relief washed over Clara like a tidal wave, almost knocking the breath out of her. The courtroom stirred, people rising as emotions surged, happy tears, muted laughter, flutters of hope. Tommy rushed to her side, his smile radiant as more tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "Thank you. I won't forget this," she whispered, her heart brimming with gratitude, alive with possibility once more. As they left the courtroom, a bond forged by fire and resilience resonated between Clara and Tommy. In the face of judgment and despair, they would rise, hand in hand, ready to heal the wounds that once seemed insurmountable. They walked into the world beyond the court's door, hearts lighter and spirits intertwined. Love had triumphed over fear, and forgiveness had opened new paths for both of them. A journey woven together, marked by newfound purpose amidst the ruins of their pasts. The shadows no longer held dominion over them. Instead, they stepped forward, realizing that in the intertwining of their stories, they had crafted a future filled with hope, courage, and relentless love. The courtroom was thick with tension, a barely contained storm of emotions swirling just below the surface. The gavel struck decisively, jolting everyone awake. The judge's voice resonated through the air like the final note of a cruel symphony, puncturing the quiet with its brutal clarity. Clara Hastings stood there, her world unraveling in that split second. Just a week before, the townsfolk had cheered her heroics. She had entered a burning house, and through flames and smoke, she had rescued a small boy trapped inside. Clara had been hailed as a savior, a shining light against the dark backdrop of tragedy. But now, she was facing the deadly consequences of a moment driven by rage rather than the love she had always fought to protect. Her mind flashed back to last summer, the scent of smoke swirling around her as she sprinted through the fire, reaching for the boy who had been calling for help, his cries piercing through the chaos. She could still feel the weight of his small body against hers as she pulled him from the flames, the warmth of his gratitude forever etched in her heart. Yet, now that same heart seemed to pound a mournful beat, echoing the inevitability of her fate. The prosecutor, a man with sharp features and a sharper tongue, turned toward the jury. "This woman is no hero. She allowed her emotions to lead her into a confrontation, resulting in a heinous act." His words sliced through the air, wrapping around Clara's throat like a noose. Clara felt as if she were being suffocated by the weight of their judgment. The whispers from the gallery felt like sharp knives against her skin, accusations seeping into the very marrow of her bones. She wanted to scream, to stand and defend the truth behind her actions. But how do you argue when your heart's desire has led to destruction? The prosecutor painted vivid scenes of her moment of rage, describing how she had confronted a man who had been responsible for her brother's death, how her impulsive decision led to dire consequences. "This is not a case of a good person who made a bad choice." His voice shook with conviction, and with each word Clara felt the noose tighten. And just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, a familiar voice broke through the tension. Everyone turned. At the back of the courtroom stood Tommy, the boy she had saved, now transformed from a fragile child to a young man, his determination clear in the set of his jaw. Clara's heart flipped. Could he really speak on her behalf? Would they listen to him? Clara felt a surge of hope. "Yes," he replied, his voice steady. The judge nodded, granting him permission to approach the stand. Tommy walked forward with a confidence that belied his age, each step resonating like the beat of a drum echoing in the silence. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice strong yet vulnerable. "I was there," he declared, locking eyes with Clara for a brief moment. "I know what happened." Clara saved me from that fire. She didn't let fear stop her. She fought through the smoke and the heat. She didn't think twice about her own safety. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Clara's heart raced. The prosecutor shifted, visibly irritated. This was not part of the script. I lost everything that day, Tommy continued, a tremor in his voice. My family, my home, but Clara brought me back to life. She is not a violent person. She's a protector. Tension hung heavily in the air as Tommy pressed on. Everyone seems to see what she did wrong, but no one sees how much she has cared for others, how deeply she has suffered. We're all just trying to heal in our own ways. The prosecutor could feel the battle slipping from his grasp. What do you really know about justice, boy? I know loss, Tommy challenged, his voice rising. I know that Clara acted out of love for her brother. When we're hurt, we sometimes lash out. The atmosphere shifted, the weight of his words sinking in. Clara felt a flicker of hope, but fear still clung heavily to her. Could this young man's courage truly change the course of fate? Would they choose to listen? The judge leaned forward, intrigued. Tell me, Tommy, what would you have us believe? That kindness can conquer everything. Tommy paused, his expression one of raw sincerity. I believe we need to look beyond our mistakes, Your Honor. Every one of us is filled with darkness alongside our light. Clara has given so much to this community. The courtroom had turned into a battleground of hearts, a place where love and pain intertwined, challenging the black and white ideals of justice. Clara felt Tommy's every word washing over her, wrapping her in warmth even amid the coldness surrounding her. Could it be enough? But the prosecutor wasn't finished. You say she deserves a chance, but what about the chance taken from another? Tommy's resolve didn't waver. That's true, she made a terrible mistake. We all do, but punishing her will not bring anyone back. It won't fix what's broken. The judge watched as the two faced off, both young and full of conviction. A wave of murmurs swept through the gallery, the tension transforming into something palpable, a flicker of empathy igniting beneath the surface. Tommy, Clara whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. I wanted you to know you're not alone, he replied, his gaze unwavering. You're more than just a choice you made. You're a person who cares deeply. As silence settled again, Clara felt the enormity of the moment. The judge, once preoccupied with protocols and procedural chaos, was now deeply engaged, contemplating the tangled roots of human emotion laid bare before him. Your Honor, Clara spoke, voice steady despite the weight of it all. Tommy's bravery is what every person in this room needs to embrace. I couldn't gather the strength to show compassion for myself before, but now I realize this is bigger than me. The courtroom felt electric, emotions flaring with each passing moment. Clara searched the judge's face, hoping to read his thoughts, his heart. And then came the gavel, not as a strike of finality, but more like a heartbeat returning to life. The judge appeared thoughtful, his brow furrowing as he assessed them. There's clearly more at play here than simply punishment. The prosecutor's face darkened, but Clara could see cracks in his facade. The jury sat in rapt attention, their expressions shifting as understanding began to take root, a realization that life was complex. After a moment, the judge cleared his throat. Your sentence will be time served. You will undergo a program focused on rehabilitation and community service. Relief washed over Clara like a wave, a tidal ebb carrying her burdens away. Gasps of disbelief, then relief, coursed through the courtroom. Hope spiraled upward like smoke dissipating into the air. Thank you, tears spilled down Clara's cheeks as she felt the weight of fear lift. She turned to Tommy. Thank you for believing in me. You do deserve it, he smiled softly, the innocence of their moment piercing through the earlier chaos. As they left the courtroom together, Clara held onto Tommy's words, woven into the very fabric of her heart. This boy, carved from experiences that could have turned him bitter, stood as a beacon of resilience, illuminating the path forward. They had gone from flames to freedom, understanding that every life had shadows, but it was the connection and compassion in the light that offered true redemption. They stepped into a world reclaimed, ready to face the future, not as enemies of their past, but as warriors of hope, crafted from a shared journey marked by love. In that moment, Clara understood one undeniable truth. Even amid darkness, there is always the potential to rise, to transform, and to heal. Together, they would embrace that journey. The gavel hit the desk with a decisive crack, slicing through the heavy silence of the courtroom. The judge's voice rolled over the crowd like thunder, echoing off the walls and crashing into Clara Hastings's heart. Standing there, she felt the world tilt beneath her, the weight of anguish pressing down like 1,000 bricks. Just days before, she had been celebrated as a hero, a brave woman who ran into a burning house to save a boy. Now, she stood accused of murder, her life hanging by a thread. Clara had lived in this small town long enough for everyone to know her name. They had called her a savior when she pulled young Tommy from the flames, his cries etched forever in her memory. That moment defined her, but now she was labeled a monster, twisted into something unrecognizable. How did a moment of passion turn into this grim reality? The prosecutor was relentless. This woman acted out of revenge. In a blind fury, she took matters into her own hands, leading to the death of a man who was tortured within this community. Each word hit Clara like a physical blow, a set of chains wrapping tighter around her neck. Her thoughts scrambled in disarray. The man he spoke of had been responsible for so much pain, but Clara hadn't meant to hurt anyone. She had acted, not in calculated vengeance, but in a tumultuous moment where love collided with anger. Her brother's murder had left her hollow, a dark void filled only with memories of loss and grief. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the prosecutor laid out the flow of events, how Clara had sought confrontation, how emotions flared, leading to a shocking tragedy. Clara's heart raced as she listened, her stomach churning with disbelief. Was this how they would remember her? As a villain in their stories? The judge's gavel struck again. He commanded, rocking his chair slightly and turning his attention back to the matter at hand. Clara scanned the jury, hoping for a hint of compassion. Instead, she saw faces hardened by fear and confusion. Would they see her as a protector or a predator? And just when Clara thought all hope was lost, a voice rang out from the back of the room. All eyes turned. It was Tommy, the very boy she had saved from that inferno. Now standing tall and young, his eyes were filled with fire, a determination that seemed to illuminate the dim confines of the courtroom. Clara's heart swelled, a surge of hope breaking through the fog of despair. She gasped, anxiety shooting through her veins. "Yes," he replied with fierce conviction. The judge nodded, allowing Tommy to approach the stand. With each step, Clara felt a pulse of anticipation rising in the air like a coiled spring ready to release. Tommy's presence was electric, a bright beacon in a sea of darkness. "Your Honor," he began. "I know Clara. I remember the fire, the smoke, everything. She didn't just save me, she fought the flames like a warrior." The gallery buzzed with whispers, uncertainty creeping into the spaces left by judgment. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Would they listen to Tommy's truth? Could he steer them away from the dark narrative spinning around her? "I lost everything that day," Tommy continued, emotion washing over him. "But one thing I did not lose was my faith in Clara. She was my hero. She ran through the fire to save me." Clara's heart raced faster. Could this young boy's courage change the tide? She watched as Tommy stood there, fierce yet vulnerable, a warrior of truth echoing the sentiment that she had longed for, hoping they would hear him. "Your Honor," Tommy pressed, looking directly at the judge, "I know everyone thinks of vengeance when they talk about Clara, but I feel like she's hurting. We all make mistakes. Life can twist us into versions we don't recognize." The prosecutor scoffed, attempting to regain control of the narrative. "And what does a child know about justice?" His voice dripped with disdain. Tommy's resolve didn't falter. "I may be young, but I know what pain feels like. I lost my family, I lost my home, and I know Clara only wants to protect the one she loves. The law can punish, but it cannot heal." Tension hung thick in the air, a palpable energy igniting between them. Clara held her breath. Tommy's unwavering belief shimmered like a thread weaving through the courtroom, connecting all their hearts. Could it be enough to shift the narrative? "Tommy," Clara whispered, tears welling in her eyes, "you don't have to do this for me." His gaze never wavered. "You're brave enough to save lives, Clara." The judge leaned in, intrigued. "What you say is commendable, young man, but justice has its own weight. What do you wish for Clara?" "Yes, Your Honor," Tommy implored, emotion flaring in his voice. "I'm asking for understanding. for realizing that our actions don't define us completely. The courtroom shifted, whispers buzzed like bees, creating a swell of conversation that echoed through the stony silence. Clara's heart raced in rhythm with the energy around her. Could the idea of mercy take root in such a tense environment? The prosecutor spat. "You think asking for mercy will change her actions?" "Maybe," Tommy responded. "But what about the chance for redemption? We're all flawed, and anyone can feel love in their heart while struggling with anger. What if we allowed Clara the opportunity to unlearn the pain, to understand her mistakes?" The judge glared at the prosecutor, then looked back at Tommy. The weight of his words hung in the air, stirring something deeper than just the proceedings before them. Clara could see the judge's stern expression soften, a flicker of understanding shining through the cracks of his authority. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, frustration seeping through his polished attitude. "But it should," came Tommy's reply, his voice ringing clear. "Understanding is what we all are looking for." A hush fell over the room, a collective breath held as the gravity of Tommy's words pressed in like an encroaching tide. Clara felt the walls close in, her heart racing as she battled the weight of her own despair against the glimmer of hope Tommy had ignited. The judge furrowed his brow in contemplation, weighing the words spoken against the clashing sentiments of justice and mercy. "What you say has merit, young man." Tommy nodded, understanding the delicate balance they were treading. "I get that, but if mercy doesn't accompany justice, then we become a society of punishment rather than healing." Clara felt the wet heat of tears run down her cheeks as hope surged within her. Could they truly make a change? She wanted to reach out, to say that she was sorry, and that she didn't want this any longer. And then, in that moment suspended in time, the gavel sounded again, a heartbeat that seemed to span eternity as the judge spoke. Every heartbeat felt deafening as the judge continued. "I do not take lightly the life that was lost nor the pain that has emerged from this situation. However, I also believe in the power of redemption. You will not hang for your actions. Instead, you will receive a sentence focused on rehabilitation through community service and emotional counseling." A wave of emotion washed over Clara, a mixture of relief and disbelief crashing like waves against the shore. The courtroom erupted into whispers, but in that moment, all she felt was the warmth of hope pressing back against the hate that had sought to consume her. Tears streamed down Tommy's face as he rushed to her, enveloping her in a hug filled with the kind of understanding that transcends words. "You did it, Clara." Through choking sobs, Clara whispered, "Thank you, Tommy. Your bravery saved me today." As the courtroom began to settle, moving from tension to relief, Clara realized that it hadn't just been her fight. It had been Tommy's too, a shared journey through grief and hope. United in the face of adversity, they stepped together into a future laden with the promise of restoration, weaving a new narrative where love prevailed over vengeance, where kindness poured like rain upon arid ground. They would walk this path together, one step at a time, reclaiming their lives from the shadows of their past. In that small courtroom, the world seemed to flicker with possibility, a testament to the strength of mercy and the undeniable power of love, reminders that redemption can often emerge from the most unexpected places, even when all seems lost. The gavel came down with a thundering crack, filling the courtroom with an air of despair, a sound that resonated like a funeral bell. The judge's voice was heavy with finality, striking Clara Hastings like a physical blow. She felt her heart plummet into a deep chasm of hopelessness, the ground shifting beneath her feet. Just a few days earlier, she had been a celebrated hero, the woman who sprinted into flames to save a boy. Now she stood condemned, her life dangling by a thread. In that tense moment, time seemed to stretch infinitely. The gallery erupted in murmurs, eyes darted between the judge and Clara, the horror of the verdict hanging palpably in the air. As Clara wrestled with the harsh reality of her situation, memories swirled in her mind, fiery and sharp. The day had been bright, the sun shining defiantly against the backdrop of her small town. Clara had rushed into a burning house, the heat kissing her skin as she maneuvered through smoke and chaos. She could still hear Tommy's terrified cries echoing, instinct driving her forward, fueled by love. She had emerged victorious, cradling him in her arms, the townsfolk praising her courage. Clara had been a beacon of hope until a moment of rage transformed her into a villain in their eyes. The prosecutor, a lean man with cold, calculating eyes, took center stage. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice dripping with disdain, "this woman acted out of revenge against a man who wronged her family." Clara's heart ached. They painted her as a monster, a being devoid of empathy. The truth was far more complicated than that. Driven by grief over her brother's death, she had confronted the man she believed was responsible. In that confrontation, emotions boiled over, leading to a moment of violence she had never intended. Her actions had disastrous consequences, and now the weight of them crushed her. The prosecutor continued to lay out the story, each word puncturing Clara's heart. "She thought she was above the law," he suggested, his tone heavy with accusation. As he spoke, Clara felt the eyes of the jury. Their judgment was palpable. She ached to tell her side, to share the complexities of her heart that felt so lost now. Each time the judge used that word, it felt like a sledgehammer to her spirit. The tension in the room thickened like smoke, suffocating and oppressive. Then a faint voice rang out from the back of the courtroom. Surprise swept through the room as every head turned. Standing tall and steadfast was Tommy, the boy she had once saved. Time had transformed him from a frightened child into a young man full of conviction. In that moment, he appeared like a light breaking through the clouds, illuminating the dark corners of despair surrounding her. Clara's heart raced, a flicker of hope igniting within her. Her voice barely whispered as she felt the surge of emotion swell. "I need to say this," he declared, stepping forward with fierce determination. "Clara isn't a villain. She saved my life. When I was trapped in that blaze, she rushed in without even thinking about the danger to herself." A murmur rippled through the gallery, disbelief mingled with curiosity. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Would they listen to him? Could his words change the outcome? "Please," Tommy pressed on, his voice steady. "I lost everything that day, my home, my family. But Clara brought me back. She is not the terrible person they are trying to make her out to be." As Clara looked at Tommy, she could see the pain and courage interwoven in his eyes. Memories of that fateful day flooded back. The fire had unleashed chaos, but it had also revealed heroes hidden within them. The very essence of connection between them surged anew, amplifying hope against the bleakness surrounding them. The prosecutor glared, fists clenched. He snapped, trying to regain control. Tommy shot back, his face flushed with passion. "I know pain and I know love." Shivers ran through Clara. The boy she saved was now fighting for her life. The prosecutor faltered, thrown off guard by Tommy's unexpected strength. "Tommy, you don't have to do this," Clara implored, her voice trembling. He shook his head, unwavering. "You're strong enough to save lives." The tension in the courtroom was palpable. "Your Honor," Tommy continued, his emotions raw, his voice echoing with sincerity, "we all make mistakes. I've seen it firsthand. We're human." The judge leaned forward, intrigued. He questioned, the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon all present. "I'm asking for empathy," Tommy replied, his voice firm yet vulnerable. "I'm asking you to see Clara as more than a moment. She's made a mistake, but she's not irredeemable." In that charged moment, every heart in the room seemed to beat in rhythmic unity, inching toward understanding. Clara felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Tommy was bearing the burden of truth, shining a light into the dusty corners of her darkest hour. The prosecutor, visibly simmering, shot back. "You think asking for forgiveness will change the facts? She caused a death. But so does mercy," Tommy countered quickly, gripping the stand. "What will punishing her really accomplish?" Clara found her own voice rising, infused with fervor. "I'm not asking for freedom from justice." The atmosphere shifted like a tide, the air charged with a mixture of doubt and fragile hope. The judge's face softened, reflecting an understanding rarely visible amid the grimness of the law. "I applaud your bravery, Tommy. However, the law must stand as a guardrail, but perhaps we can explore rehabilitation rather than mere punishment," the judge mused, pondering the heavy balance of life. Suddenly, the room held its breath. Clara's heart raced, each minute pulse echoing in her ears. Could this moment actually change the course of her life? The prosecutor's lips pressed into a tight line, frustration creeping into his expression. "You really believe that giving her a chance to reform makes sense?" Tommy seized the moment. "It sets a precedent for compassion. It shows that we value life and the ability to learn from our mistakes. Isn't that what we truly want as a society?" Clara turned toward Tommy, her heart swelling with admiration. Could one boy's courage reshape the narrative spun from the ashes? He turned back to Clara, his demeanor thoughtful. "Your actions led to a tragic loss, and you must face the consequences." As the gavel echoed through the space again, it felt different this time, less a finality and more an invitation. "I will sentence you to a period of community service, along with counseling to address your grief and course of action." Hope exploded within Clara, illuminating every dark crevice her heart had inhabited. The relief settled like a gentle wave, washing over her as tears ran freely down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. As the gravity of the moment struck, the crowd erupted in a flurry of reactions, from disbelief to quiet relief. Tommy rushed to Clara, the glow of hope radiating between them. "You did it, you'll get to heal," he exclaimed, his voice filled with joy. "You gave me this chance," Clara said through sobs, pulling him into a tight embrace. "Your strength saved me today." Their bond, forged from pain, transformed into a pledge of healing. They were no longer alone, tethered to each other as they began their journey into the unknown. The world no longer felt like an endless pit of despair. It became a path filled with promise. As they walked out of the courtroom together, the sun shone bright, illuminating their path ahead, a testament to the power of empathy and the resilience of the human spirit. Clara knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face the darkness that lay ahead. She had been given a chance, not just by the law, but through the love and bravery of a boy whose life she had saved, a beautiful twist of fate that spoke volumes about the transformative power of mercy. The journey of healing was just beginning, but now Clara felt equipped with newfound strength. Together, they would rise, turn pain into purpose, and embrace a future woven with love and resilience. In a world that often felt unforgiving, they had found a glimmer of hope and a reason to believe in second chances. The gavel slammed down, echoing through the quiet courtroom, a sharp sound that cut through the tension like a knife. The judge's voice rang out, heavy with authority, and Clara Hastings felt her heart drop into the pit of her stomach. She stood there, frozen, as if the room had been cast into a deep freeze. Just a week ago, she had been celebrated as a hero, hailed for her bravery in pulling a small boy from the flames of a burning house. And now, she was facing the gallows, her life teetering on the edge of a noose. In that instant, memories thundered through her mind, vivid flashes of the fire, the heat, the smoke, and Tommy, that frightened little boy, calling for help. She remembered how she had rushed in, disregard for her own safety, fighting through the suffocating darkness. She had saved him, snatching him from the jaws of death. But life had a cruel way of snatching her happiness right back. The prosecutor stood tall, a hawk circling its prey, eyes sharp and calculating. "This woman acted out of vengeance," he declared, his voice slicing through the air like a blade. Each word felt like a dagger, piercing through Clara's heart, leaving her gasping for breath. She felt a whirlwind of shame mixed with anger, a desperate need to defend herself surged inside her. But how could she fight against such a tide? The memories of that day came flooding back, memories intertwined with rage and grief. It was true, she had confronted the man responsible for her brother's death, and in a moment fueled by anger, she had let that rage consume her. The man had wronged her family, and she had felt justified in her actions, but the aftermath was indescribable. The world had transformed her from savior to sinner in a breath. Clara cried out, interrupting the prosecutor's steady stream of accusations. Her voice trembled, the emotion a raw force pushing against her walls. But the judge's expression remained impassive, his gavel looming like a hammer about to fall again. Clara felt the weight of despair pressing down on her chest. Every person in the room seemed to close in, their judgment clear in their eyes. Would anyone listen to her? As the prosecutor continued with his account of her crime, Clara stole a glance around the courtroom. She saw familiar faces twisted in disbelief, her friends, once supporters, now gazing at her with fear and resentment. Each look felt like a betrayal, another shackle binding her tighter in this web of hopelessness. And then, in a moment that seemed to still the universe, a voice rang out from the back. All heads turned, startled by the interruption. It was Tommy, the very boy she had saved. He stood tall against the backdrop of the courtroom, no longer that frightened child, but a brave young man, fueled by emotion, ready to confront the demons of the past. Clara's heart soared and plummeted at the same time. The weight of his presence flooded her with warmth. Could he really be here to help her? He shouted, stepping forward as if propelled by something greater than himself. "I know Clara." Tommy's voice rang out, unwavering. "Clara saved me from that fire. She didn't think about herself." Gasps rippled through the courtroom, a wave of astonishment sweeping over the jury and spectators alike. Clara's heart raced, her spirit igniting with a flicker of hope. Could Tommy's bravery turn the tide for her? "Tommy," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. He insisted, his voice fierce and determined. The prosecutor, taken aback, regained composure. He scoffed, disbelief draping his words like a heavy cloak. Tommy shot back, unyielding. "I lost my family in that fire. I know pain, but I also know love, and Clara acted out of love. She saved me when no one else could." The silence in the room felt almost deafening as Tommy's words began to settle in. Clara watched his eyes, filled with conviction, and the warmth of their shared bond began to wash away the despair. Could more people see what she saw in him? Could they understand the truth beneath the accusations? "Everyone makes mistakes," Tommy continued, voice shaking but steady. "People only see Clara's one moment of weakness, but they forget everything else she's done. She didn't hurt anyone intentionally, and punishing her won't bring anyone back." The atmosphere shifted. Eyes began to soften, uncertainty woven through the fabric of the courtroom. Clara felt a glimmer of hope flickering to life. She wanted to run to Tommy, embrace him with all her strength and gratitude. Could it be that his bravery would save her just as she had saved him? "Your Honor," she spoke, feeling compelled to join Tommy in this fight. "What he says is true. I acted in a moment of rage, yes, but I never sought to cause harm. The emotions I felt were like a storm." The prosecutor, frustrated but unrelenting, prepared to counter. "You call it a storm, but you brought the thunder." Tommy stepped forward once more, determination etched on his face. "Justice should be about understanding, not just punishment. Clara deserves a chance." The judge leaned forward, considering Tommy's passionate plea, the weight of his words hanging in the air. For a moment it felt as though time stood still, as if the universe was holding its breath. Clara felt tears coursing down her cheeks, a bittersweet mixture of hope and despair battling within her. The judge finally said, his deep voice carrying the weight of gravity. Tommy replied, his chest rising and falling with emotion. "Let her serve the community. Let her find a way to heal and help others." The gallery murmured again, uncertainty replacing anger, empathy beginning to break through like dawn after a long night. The judge's gaze shifted from Tommy to Clara, an assessment brewing in his mind. Could he see beyond the accusations? Was it possible that a glimmer of mercy could emerge in this bleak landscape? Clara turned to the judge, her heart racing. "Your Honor, I stand here today not just for myself, but for everyone. I want to heal to help others." A few of the jury members glanced at one another, uncertainty written across their faces. The tide was shifting, the scales of justice wavering. "Life isn't black and white," the judge said slowly, as if weighing every word. "Mistakes can cloud our vision, turn us into shadows of ourselves." The prosecutor opened his mouth to argue, but the judge's look silenced him. "You plead for understanding, young man, but what about the consequences of her actions?" Tommy's face flushed with determination. "What if the law could embrace compassion? What if we could redefine justice?" Clara echoed, her voice breaking. "Instead of a death sentence, give me a path to redemption." The judge's frown slowly began to lift, understanding blooming in his eyes. "Your words are powerful and they carry weight." Silence enveloped the room again, the weight of the moment pressing down, stretching time into something tangible. Clara could feel the hearts of those around her begin to shift, an awareness rising. Hope lit up the darkness that had felt so consuming. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke again, his voice steady. "I will offer one more chance, but it will not be easy. Clara Hastings, I am sentencing you to community service and counseling. You will face your demons and seek to understand your actions." Relief crashed over Clara, a wave powerful enough to sweep her off her feet. Tears spilled down her cheeks, joy and gratitude spilling forth. The gallery began to stir, murmurs of surprise and relief cascading through the room. "Thank you," Clara whispered, her voice thick with emotion, turning to Tommy. "Thank you for believing in me." Tommy grinned, his eyes bright. "You were always worth it, Clara." As they left the courtroom together, Clara felt a new sense of purpose ignite within her. The sun shone brightly outside, a promise of warmth and new beginnings. She knew the path to redemption would not be easy, but she could finally see the steps before her. Tommy walked beside her, his presence a reminder of resilience. They had both learned that life is woven with shadows and light, filled with mistakes and the chance to learn from them. Together, they could transform the pain of their past into something meaningful for the future. Clara took a deep breath, the air filled with possibility. They stepped into a world waiting for them, ready to face the challenges ahead, hand in hand. They were not just a woman who made a grave mistake and a boy who had been saved. They were warriors of hope, ready to fight for redemption, knowing that together, they could find a way through the darkest nights toward a dawn filled with promise. The gavel struck hard against the wooden desk, cracking the stillness of the courtroom like thunder. The judge's voice cut through the air, and Clara Hastings felt her heart shatter into 1,000 shards. A week ago, she had been a hero, celebrated for racing into flames to save a small boy trapped in a burning house. Now, she stood on the precipice of death, her life hanging by a thread, the noose inches away from her future. As the accusations poured from the prosecutor's lips, Clara's mind spiraled through chaos. Panic clawed at her throat, memories rushing back in vivid detail. She had rushed in without a second thought, adrenaline surging through her veins as she carried Tommy from the inferno, his small body cradled in her arms. She could still hear the cries of terrified neighbors, the crackling of flames as they licked at her clothes. Now, those memories felt like a heavy shadow, darkening her every thought. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, his voice dripping with disdain, "this woman acted out of vengeance." Each sentence stabbed at Clara, each word an accusation that echoed in her soul. She wanted to scream, to tell everyone that she hadn't meant to hurt anyone. But here she was, being painted as a villain for one terrible moment in a life filled with love. The weight of despair settled over her like a suffocating blanket. How had everything unraveled so quickly? "Clara Hastings," the judge intoned, his voice somber, "you are charged with murder." The finality in his voice felt like a bell tolling for her soul, its echo bouncing off the cold, stone walls surrounding her. Every eye in the courtroom bore into her, some filled with contempt, others with disbelief. In that moment, Clara felt small and helpless. How did she go from savior to monster in the eyes of her community? As tears pooled in her eyes, she looked around, searching for someone, anyone to believe in her. And just then, a nervous voice cut through the thick tension. Everyone turned at once, startled by the unexpected interruption. It was Tommy, now a young man. The boy she had saved stood tall and determined, a fire igniting in his eyes. Clara's heart leaped. Could he truly be here for her? She barely breathed his name, both grateful and terrified. He shouted, stepping forward. The judge nodded, granting him permission. As Tommy approached the front, Clara felt a surge of hope. Here was the boy she had saved, willing to stand against the tide, driven by truth. "Your Honor, I remember that day vividly," Tommy said, his voice steady though he was trembling with emotion. "Clara ran into that fire to save me." The room buzzed with murmurs. Clara could feel the air shift, the tide of judgment beginning to waver. Tommy's words struck chords of memory in everyone who knew what she had done. He continued, connecting with the jury, looking deep into their eyes. "She is a hero. I lost my entire family that day, but she brought me back to life." Clara felt her heart swell. Could Tommy's bravery actually challenge their perception? Murmurs of disbelief coursed through the room, but Tommy pushed on, undeterred by the eyes of doubt. Everyone thinks Clara made a horrible mistake, and yes, she did. But she didn't hurt anyone on purpose. We're all human and we can feel lost in anger. We all slip sometimes. He paused, his gaze unwavering. "I know about pain, I've lived it." The prosecutor sneered, irritation flaring. "And what does a child know about justice?" Tommy shot back, stepping closer, determination radiating from him. I know loss. I know what it's like to fight for your life, and Clara fought for mine. Tommy's words hung in the air, each syllable gripping the audience like a vice. Clara wanted to reach out, to embrace him for standing up for her, pouring his heart into the room where judgment loomed large. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she felt the truth of his statement envelop her, but she could see the prosecutor grinding his teeth, unwilling to relent. You're just a kid, Tommy. This isn't a storybook. Tommy's resolve did not waver. He replied, understanding. Justice can't just be about punishment. It has to be about recognizing human flaws and offering a chance at redemption. As Tommy spoke, the weighty silence turned into an explosion of murmurs and whispers among the spectators. It was palpable, the air thickened with the tension of an unraveling narrative. Clara's heart raced, hope igniting as they began to shift their gaze toward her. Your Honor, she said, her voice rising through the cacophony of confusion. What Tommy says is true. I made a mistake and I've been haunted by that. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. The judge's gaze flickered between Clara and Tommy. She could see him weighing the gravity of the moment, wrestling between law and compassion. Clara continued, give me a chance to redeem myself. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world held its breath. Clara didn't just want to prove her innocence. She wanted to reclaim her worth as a human being, to rise from the ashes of her mistakes and become something beautiful. The prosecutor stared incredulously at Tommy, trying to regain control of the narrative. This is preposterous. A moment of kindness cannot erase a tragic decision. Tommy responded, emotion thick in his voice. By allowing Clara a second chance, you give the world a reminder that we are all capable of change. The gallery fell silent, contemplating his words. Clara felt hope blossom, a fragile flower pushing through cracked concrete. It seemed unimaginable that one boy's courageous heart could sway a courtroom, but here they were, on the precipice of something transformative. Your Honor, the judge said slowly, his voice deliberate, turning to face the gallery. I recognize the unfortunate complexity of this case. Mistakes can define us, but they also can bring us to deeper truths if we allow them to. The tension was palpable, a tightrope walk between despair and redemption. Clara could feel the judge's gaze piercing through her, evaluating not only her actions but the weight of love that radiated from Tommy. The prosecutor fumed, clenching and unclenching his jaw as he faced the judge. Are you truly considering letting her escape punishment? Justice is neither blind nor heartless, the judge replied, his tone firm. What I see are two young souls touched by extraordinary circumstances. Clara's breath hitched in her throat. Would the judge really have the courage to embrace this moment? Would he be willing to let grace and understanding guide him rather than just punishment? After a moment that felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke again, his voice resonant with resolution. Clara Hastings, you have deeply affected the lives of those around you, both positively and negatively. You will not face capital punishment. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom, a ripple of disbelief transforming into tentative relief. Clara's heart soared. It was a lifeline thrown in the midst of a storm. She turned, tears cascading down her cheeks, overwhelmed by gratitude. Tommy rushed to her side, his enthusiasm sparking joy inside her that had long been extinguished. You did it. You get a chance. As they embraced, Clara sobbed into his shoulder, the flood of emotion pouring out like a downpour breaking through a drought. She exclaimed, gripping him tightly, You saved me today. The courtroom shifted from shock to support, murmurs of hope taking root. Clara and Tommy turned to face the crowd, friends, family, bystanders who saw the aftermath of pain unfold. She had transcended from the depths of despair, tied now to the very boy she had once rescued. Exiting the courtroom, Clara felt a wave of fresh air wash over her, each breath filled with newfound purpose. Tommy walked beside her, his presence a beacon of resilience illuminating the path forward. Together, we can make a difference, he said, his smile radiant as they stepped out into a world filled with possibilities. Clara took a deep breath, the weight lifting from her shoulders. She glanced back at the courtroom, the memories of despair still there, but now mingling with hope and redemption. She had a chance to rebuild, to channel her pain into something greater. She could turn her darkest moments into a catalyst for healing. Hand in hand, they stepped into the warmth of a new day, ready to face the challenges ahead together. She knew the road would be filled with trials and learning, but now, within her burned the light of resilience. They would rise, not just for themselves, but for everyone who'd ever felt lost, ensuring that no lesson was wasted and no love would be left behind. The gavel struck hard against the wooden desk, the sound resonating like thunder through the tense courtroom. The judge's voice sliced through the air, and Clara Hastings felt her breath hitch, a cold wave of fear crashing over her. Just days before, she had worn the crown of heroism, celebrated for running into a raging fire to save a small boy. Now, she stood shackled, facing the ultimate price for a moment of reckless fury. She thought, her mind racing back to that fateful day when flames danced like demons across the sky. She had dashed into the inferno, adrenaline coursing through her veins, driven by a singular thought: saving Tommy. He was just a child, but in that moment he was her everything. She could practically hear his cries, feel the pulse of fear in the air. But now those memories felt tainted, shadows looming over what should have been a moment of triumph. The prosecutor stood tall, moving with the confidence of a man convinced of his righteousness. "This woman," he declared, gesturing toward Clara, "thinks she can escape the consequences of her actions." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. Every word was a knife, twisting and turning, slicing through her defense. Memories flooded back, reminding her of her confrontation with the man she believed was responsible for her brother's death. It had been a moment of pent-up pain and sorrow. She had let her emotions spiral out of control, believing she was right to confront him. The consequences, however, had spiraled into something beyond her control. As the prosecutor continued, painting her as a villain, Clara felt trapped in a web of fear and regret. Her pulse quickened as those around her whispered and pointed, their judgment palpable. The weight of their gaze pressed down on her shoulders. She wanted to scream that she didn't mean for any of this to happen, that she was only trying to protect those she loved. Yet the walls felt like they were closing in, stifling her last whispers of hope. "Your Honor," the judge interjected, his tone commanding as he settled upon Clara with a heavy gaze. In that chilling moment, Clara's breath hitched. The word "hang" hung in the air, thick and suffocating, fueling her desperation. She felt her world crumbling, hope slipping through her fingers like sand. Would anyone come to her defense? Would the memories of her actions turn them against her forever? But just then, like a comet breaking through a night sky, a voice rang out from the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor." All heads turned, eyes widening in surprise as they recognized the figure standing defiantly at the back. It was Tommy, the very boy Clara had saved from the flames, now transformed into a determined young man. His presence filled the room with a flicker of hope, as if the universe had sent a guardian angel at the final hour. Clara gasped, her heart swelling with pride and fear. What would he say? Did he understand the gravity of the situation? Yes. Tommy approached the stand, his every step fueled by an unwavering resolve. "I remember the fire. I remember Clara running in fearless when everyone else stood frozen. She didn't care if she got hurt." Gasps erupted in the crowd, disbelief mingling with curiosity. Clara's heart raced. Could his words turn the tide in her favor? Could they find understanding where there had only been condemnation? "Your Honor," Tommy continued, locking eyes with the judge, "Clara isn't a murderer. She's a hero. Yes, she made a mistake, but it was a moment of anger fueled by grief. She's hurting just like I am. We all make mistakes." A ripple of energy coursed through the courtroom as people began to shift in their seats, the atmosphere thickening with emotion. Clara felt a rush of gratitude, but also apprehension. Could Tommy's courage truly make a difference? "Think about it," Tommy urged, looking at the jury and beyond, pouring his heart into every word. "I lost everything that day, but Clara saved me. She fought through hell to pull me out. She acted out of love, not hatred. Love can drive us to incredible things, but it can also lead us to dark places." The prosecutor tightened his grip on the lectern, frustration evident on his face. "You expect us to take emotions into account, to let a child's plea cloud our judgment," Tommy exclaimed, his voice rising. "What kind of justice takes a life without understanding? What good does it do to just punish someone without considering their heart? Clara needs help, not death. She's not just a criminal. Clara watched, her breath caught in her throat. Tommy was pouring everything he had into this moment, hoping to crystallize a truth that had almost been lost in despair. She could feel the warmth of his courage wrapping around her like a lifeline. She interjected, finally finding her voice. "I never wanted this. I wanted to protect those I lost. I wanted to be brave. I have suffered too, and I still suffer." The judge leaned forward, intrigued. But his expression remained a careful balance of doubt and curiosity. "Every action has consequences, and the law must reflect that," he stated slowly. "And every heart has layers, Your Honor," Tommy replied, determination unwavering. "We need to teach compassion through justice, not hate." As the prosecutor fumed in the background, the murmurs in the gallery grew louder, the air thick with uncertainty and the flicker of hope. Could this actually work? Could they teach empathy in a world that often favored vengeance? The prosecutor snapped, his voice cutting through the tension that hung like an unwelcome guest. "She took a life." "Maybe not," Tommy insisted, his voice steady. "But she saved a life too. 2 lives were forever changed that day." The judge, weighing Tommy's passionate plea, turned to Clara. "I will," Clara whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I want to be a better person. I want to use my pain to help others, not just wallow in despair. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I'm sorry for my reckless choices." The silence in the room was profound, the weight of uncertainty mingling with something else, hope. Tommy's courage had ignited a spark, and for the first time, Clara felt a glimmer of possibility. The judge raised his gavel, preparing to speak, but the prosecutor wouldn't be dismissed so easily. "This is suicide for justice." And in that climactic moment, Clara sensed she was standing on the verge of a decision that would shape her life forever. The choice hung in the air like a heavy fog, uncertain and laden with consequence. "Your Honor," she urged, desperation creeping into her tone, "I've made mistakes, yes, but don't we all deserve a chance to be redeemed?" The judge paused, the room holding its collective breath, every eye fixed upon him. It was clear, this was not just about Clara. It was about the capacity for change and the power of forgiveness. But before he could speak, a sudden knock echoed from the courtroom door, a loud interruption that sliced through the tension like a knife. Everyone turned as the door swung open, and in walked a figure shrouded in shadows, a figure Clara recognized too well. It was a man from her past, the very man who had caused her brother's death, the catalyst for her loss and all the pain that followed. "Let's see how justice is served here today," he sneered, a malicious grin dancing on his lips. The atmosphere shifted instantly, a chill running down Clara's spine. The judge's eyes narrowed. He shouted, the weight of authority clashing with the tension in the room, but the man stepped forward undeterred. "I have something to say about what happened that day." Tommy turned to Clara, confusion spreading across his face. Clara felt her pulse race, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. She had hoped never to see him again. Not now, not here. As he approached, the courtroom bristled with anticipation, emotions swirling like a tempest, hoisting Clara into the chaos threatening to consume her. Would this man dismantle everything she had fought for? Would the fragile hope Tommy had ignited in their hearts be snuffed out like a candle flickering in the wind? "Your Honor," the man said, raising his voice above the rising swell. "I know what really happened that day, and I'll make sure everyone hears it." In that moment, Clara realized the stakes had just been raised. The courtroom felt poised at the edge of a precipice, teetering between redemption and ruin. The darkness was closing in, and the future hung in the balance, leaving Clara with a heart full of dread and the realization that this battle was far from over.